Imagine coming home after a long day at university, only to find the food you bought with your own money gone. Again. And then, just when you think revenge is impossible, a little science turns the tables. What happened next? Let's just say those thieves won't be stealing anyone else's lunch ever again. If you've ever been frustrated, betrayed, or underestimated, hit that subscribe button. Like this video and comment below if you've ever wished karma had a very personal address. Today you're about to witness a story where justice isn't just served. It's perfectly engineered. I was a first-year university student somewhere in the west of England, and I was living in a massive Georgian student house with 23 other undergrads and postgrads. Picture it. Creaky floors, endless corridors, and a house full of lads. 3 kitchens, 3 fridges, and yet somehow my food never seemed to survive the week. You know that feeling, right? You buy a block of cheese, a tub of yogurt, or a sandwich for yourself, and by the next day, it's vanished. Always gone. It was the same couple of guys every time, the ones who seemed to believe that your fridge really meant our fridge. At first, I laughed it off. Then I got angry. Then finally, I got calculated. Now, this wasn't just petty jealousy or laziness. I was studying microbiology, and we had just started working with orthopox virus in lab. For context, this is a virus related to cowpox, far milder and harmless enough for first-year students to use under standard lab precautions. Gloves, masks, glasses, the works. Even so, one of my lab partners got careless. She heated her inoculating loop too quickly and aerosolized a tiny amount, ending up with a small blister on her lip. It was a clear lesson in how even a harmless virus could leave you with an unpleasant surprise if handled incorrectly. Meanwhile, back at the house, my frustration with the food theft reached its breaking point. I watched my groceries disappear week after week, the thefts brazen and repeated. I could feel my blood pressure spike, my jaw clenching every time I opened the fridge to find my meals gone. Rationality left the room. All that remained was a cold, quiet plan forming in the back of my mind. I started thinking like a microbiologist, which is both terrifying and beautiful in its precision. Every vial, every sample, every lesson about pathogens began to form a blueprint for justice. If they're going to steal from me, I thought, I'll make sure the next meal they take isn't just lunch. It's a lesson. It took some careful consideration. I didn't want to hurt anyone seriously, just a little nudge of discomfort that would make them think twice. I remembered the lab experiments and that orthopox virus sample sitting quietly on my bench, completely harmless if handled correctly, but capable of creating a temporary localized lesion. That was it. A small, controlled, educational discomfort. One evening, while everyone was out or busy in their own corners of the house, I executed my plan. I took a small sample of the orthopox virus, just enough, and carefully added it to a block of cheese in the fridge. Every precaution, every tiny detail from sterile technique to preventing cross-contamination was meticulously applied. My heart was hammering, not out of fear but anticipation. The thrill of controlled revenge coursing through my veins. Days later, the plan unfolded beautifully. 2 of the habitual food thieves, emboldened as ever, raided my fridge. They took that cheese unsuspecting. A day or 2 later, it happened. Small blister-like lesions appeared around their mouths. Harmless, temporary, but oh so inconvenient. The discomfort was enough that they became reclusive, staying in their rooms, hiding from the world, unsure why their mouths suddenly felt like tiny volcanic eruptions. From my vantage point, I could barely contain my smug satisfaction. The irony was delicious. They had been so brazen, so certain that no one would fight back. And now, the universe had delivered a perfectly proportionate response. They had learned without any serious harm that theft carries consequences. But the genius of it wasn't just in the infection, it was in the optics. I made a point to sit down in the kitchen shortly after, making myself some cheese on toast in plain view of the culprits. I handled everything with meticulous care: gloves, hot pan, toasting the cheese until it was bubbling, ensuring any virus on my food was neutralized. I left no trace, no finger-pointing, just the quiet, undeniable fact that my food was untouchable from that point onward. The thieves had an inkling it was me. I could see it in their eyes, a mix of suspicion and unease. But the evidence was circumstantial, and they knew better than to accuse me outright. Meanwhile, I enjoyed my meals in peace for the first time in weeks. Each bite was a reminder of the careful, deliberate planning that had gone into delivering this small but satisfying justice. I often reflect on how risky this was. One misstep, one overestimation, and it could have been disastrous. But it wasn't about causing real harm. It was about claiming a small, personal victory in a house where I otherwise felt powerless. That balance, that razor's edge of risk versus reward, made the outcome all the sweeter. And what happened next? The thieves never touched my food again. Not a slice of cheese, not a single yogurt pot. The fear of repeating the lesson I had taught them hung over them like an invisible weight. They had learned finally that boundaries, especially my boundaries, were not to be crossed. I remember walking into the kitchen one morning, seeing the empty fridge shelves around my block of food, and feeling a deep, satisfying peace. My stomach wasn't just full, it was vindicated. The principle of justice had been enforced quietly, efficiently, and irreversibly. The lesson had been taught, the imbalance corrected. Even now, years later, I think about that Georgian house and the delicate thrill of that revenge. It wasn't just about stolen food. It was about asserting control in a world that sometimes feels unfair, where the strong-willed are often ignored. It was about showing, without saying a word, that consequences exist, that even the smallest acts of disrespect can be met with precision and intelligence. Psychologically, the satisfaction came not from malice but from cleverness. The subtlety of the act, the perfect balance of risk, and the absolute clarity of its effectiveness created a dopamine rush unlike any other. I didn't gloat, I didn't parade it, but in my mind, justice had been served. And that, more than anything, was intoxicating. The story also serves as a broader lesson about human behavior. People often underestimate the quiet, intelligent observers in their midst. They assume that small acts of theft, disrespect, or disregard will go unnoticed, that consequences are optional. But patience, strategy, and a little creativity can transform powerless frustration into an elegantly executed response. The ultimate victory wasn't just the lesions. It was the fear, the awareness, the recalibration of behavior. From that day on, my food was untouchable. The thieves became cautious, hesitant, and finally respectful, not out of fear of punishment alone, but because they understood they had underestimated someone they dismissed as powerless. On the other hand, felt a sense of liberation. Weeks of simmering frustration and helplessness evaporated. The lesson was delivered. Cleverness trumps arrogance, patience trumps impulsiveness, and sometimes justice doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be effective. Sometimes, the most satisfying victories aren't the loudest. They're quiet, precise, and leave a lasting mark on those who thought they could get away with wrongdoing. And occasionally, the best revenge is served cold, with a side of science. If you've ever had your patience tested or witnessed clever justice in action, smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories of sweet, calculated revenge, and share in the comments your favorite moment where someone got what they deserved. Remember, sometimes brains beat brawn and patience beats frustration.